Hello and welcome to Dugout Debrief. I'm your host, Chris DeLuca. This is Boone Broadcasting's one, first, and only baseball-centric podcast. I feel like I said that a lot at this point. I'm once again happy to be talking about something I care about, and I'm happy to be starting these off-season team breakdowns as we did on the last program. We flipped a coin, and we came on the AL East. We're going to be starting with a few AL East teams here this week, and we're going to go move on to some more next week. But we have a lot to cover this week, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm not going to waste your time. That is my thing. So that being said, our first piece of news, as always, Hall of Fame ballots were announced for 2025, and there's a lot of notable names on there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to read off just a few big ones. You guys can look up the full ballot, available pretty much everywhere online, Twitter, Instagram, anything in the MLB socials. Plus, you can just go to Baseball Reference, which is a wonderful stat website. Obviously, it's the best because it's essentially ad-free. So some notable names include Bobby Abreu, Carlos Beltran, Mark Burley, Carlos Gonzalez, Curtis Granderson, Alex Rodriguez. It's a familiar name. Both Hanley and Manny Ramirez, no relation. J. Roll, Troy Tulowitzki, Chase Utley, Omar Vizquel, Billy Wagner, Andy Pettit, Brian McCann, which I thought was interesting. Russell Martin, Ian Kinsler, Andrew Jones, and the list goes on. So that was a lot of people, and there's a lot more of them too that you can read. So the MLB Hall of Fame has a bunch of different ballots, and then there are the recent guys, the guys who retired 6 or more years ago, they get 10 years to get in. And on the 11th year, they get kicked off the ballot, and then they have to go to a veterans committee, essentially. So the veterans committee or the classic non-players committee also came out with their ballot as well, which you can find on baseballreference.com. Just go to the Hall of Fame section on there. Mine's pretty simple. I mean, I got to go El Tiante. I got to go with Louis Tiant. I would give him at least a vote. And by the way, all of this, the people I'm going to read off and the information I'm going to give you guys, this is just if I was one of the journalists that was privileged enough to vote for the Hall of Fame, which I'm not, but, I have an outlet to go say it. So if I was on the Classics Committee / non-players, I'd say El Tiante, Louis Tiant gets one. Ken Boyer, who had a better career than I thought he did. And then, of course, the legend Dave Parker, who should have been in, within the 6 years of his retirement. So, the more, I guess, salient one to talk about are the actives, the active committee. And Billy Wagner is the first one. I mean, he should have been in last year. He missed it by less than 0.3% of the 74%, I believe, 74, something like that, 74% that you need to get in. He's 8th all-time in saves with 422. That's more than Dennis Eckersley, Raleigh Fingers, and Goose Gossage, who are all in the Hall of Fame and all went in as relievers, which, by the way, there's been more than one reliever going into the Hall of Fame. I heard that weird rumor somewhere on social media a few years ago that, only one reliever, Mariano Rivera, was the only reliever to ever go in the Hall of Fame. I'm like, no, there's like 3 or 4 others. Like Bruce Sutter was a reliever as well, too. So at least 4 or 5 of them have gone in. So I don't really know where that came from. And I think another one is about to get that honor, as Billy Wagner has to get the votes after his 10th year going into his 11th. There is no way that they push him off the ballot, comparing him to relievers of past generations who were very, very fantastic, but the batters Billy Wagner faced were significantly better than Dennis Eckersley or Raleigh Fingers. And that's nothing against them personally. I just think pitching to a guy like Ken Griffey Jr. is a little bit harder than pitching to I won't even name random people, just random people from that generation. And again, it's no shot at the 70s and 80s. It's just every single era of baseball is different. It's the same thing as football. You can't expect Otto Graham, who was a great quarterback in his time, or Fran Tarkenton to play against, a defense like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who won this week, by the way, just so you know, we beat the Baltimore Ravens. But beside the point, my next one is CC Sabathia, who I think definitely deserves a shot. He avoided the PED bug of that generation. He was toward the tail end of that, but still something that could have been an issue for him. And as far as we know, it never was an issue for him. Sabathia is a 6-time All-Star and ALCS MVP. He led in wins 2 times, as well as innings pitched. And he also leads guys like Mike Messina in multiple important categories, who's a Hall of Famer, Messina is a Hall of Famer, such as strikeouts and innings pitched, which I think are fairly important statistical categories. My next Hall of Fame pick would be another reliever. Wow, this is a shocking one. I'm putting we're voting for at least two relievers. We're going to go with K-Rod, a guy who was overshadowed of his generation, the great Francisco Rodriguez, the Angels legend. I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. 437 saves, and he had a 2.86 ERA. I think that's fantastic for a reliever, especially how long of a career he had. He was in at least 12, 15 years, played for a variety of teams. Francisco Rodriguez was a fantastic reliever and is in the top 10 in saves. And in my opinion, if guys like Fingers and Goose Gossage are in as relievers from their generation, guys like K-Rod and Billy Wagner deserve to be in. I don't think that's a very controversial take. Next, we got Ichiro. I mean, I think he's a first ballot. I don't know if he'll be unanimous. I don't think I think the power is that he lacks. He only had about 152, 158 career home runs, something like that. That's going to make some of these more modern, long ball guys be like, I don't want to vote for him the first one, but maybe next year, the year after. I think he is for a variety of reasons. One, before Shohei Ohtani, he was the most impactful Japanese baseball player in baseball history. Simply nothing else to be said. Before Ohtani, he was the most impactful Japanese player. Just had an insane global reach. The best leadoff hitter since Ricky Henderson. I don't think that's a controversial argument. He was fast. He had contact. He got on base. That's really what matters for a leadoff hitter, especially that generation. 7-time hits leader, 10-time All-Star, MVP and Rookie of the Year in the same season. Oh, by the way, all those aforementioned awards, like all that hardware, plus he got a few 10 gold gloves as well. I have to say that's the best 10 years that any player probably ever had. He did all of that in his first 10 years of his career. MVP and Rookie of the Year in the same year is not something you see very much. 10 consecutive gold gloves and 10 consecutive All-Stars is also kind of just ridiculous. So I think that run merits him to be a Hall of Famer, but first ballot at least. But if you got something else to say, put it in the comments below. I think he's the most consistent player of the 2000s by a mile, just in general, not just hitter, most consistent player. My honorable mentions, just to round out this Hall of Fame conversation as we move on to our next piece of news, will be I have some honorable mentions. King Felix, I just don't think his numbers were there. He wasn't good enough for long. He did throw the perfect game, but the same argument goes for my next honorable mention, Mark Burley. I just don't think there was a longevity there. They had some really, really good years, and especially with King and hitting the King's court and all that in Seattle. He is a Mariners legend, but just because you throw a perfect game, it may mean that your ball and the glove and the jersey or some piece of memorabilia, even home plate, something, the mound or the rubber, pitching rubber, may be in the Hall of Fame. But it doesn't mean that you as a player get to get in. You've seen some guys who had up and down careers, such as Dallas Braden and Dennis Martinez and David Cohn and David Wells, who all had bright spots and down spots in their career, all through perfect games, and none of them are Hall of Famers. Finally, my last two honorable mentions are Jimmy Rollins and David Wright. I went on the cusp with them. I think Jimmy Rollins just, again, his glove was fantastic, but I think he was overshadowed by people of his generation. He was another fantastic leadoff hitter, but I wouldn't do it first ballot. By the way, guys, this doesn't mean that I wouldn't ever vote for them. When we do the same episode here a year from today or so, I'm probably going to go and maybe change that. David Wright or Jimmy Rollins, Mark Burley or King Felix might be on that ballot. They might not be. It might just take a little bit, but all these players that we mentioned have had fantastic careers. The final honorable mention, actually, I'll just go throw in a bonus one, is Carlos Beltran. I think that he's interesting. And I want to get some stats, actually, because this is kind of off the seat of my pants here, because I want to be able to reference this right, because there's an argument I want to make here. So he had a 70.1 career WAR, 435 home runs, and a 279 batting average career. That is fantastic. I think that those are borderline Hall of Fame numbers, because 65 to 70 is my cutoff for what's a Hall of Fame when it comes to WAR. Straight up, because we've finally gotten out of these older players and steroid era players. We're finally shedding that off of ourselves right now, ladies and gentlemen. So the big thing with him is because he was involved with the Astros cheating scandal, he was going to be the next manager of the New York Mets. Obviously, he was fired because of that, the involvement. The Mets wanted nothing to do with that. They wanted to keep their noses squeaky clean, which is fair. A lot of people don't want anything to do with the cheating scandal. I don't blame them at all. But with his association with us, there are a few guys that are either borderline or guaranteed Hall of Famers that were a part of that Astros team. Borderline. Alex Bregman, where he signs, we don't know yet. Unless he signs between the recording of this episode and when it airs, we do not know. Another kind of on the edge guy is George Springer. But again, we'll see how their careers finish out, if they're Hall of Famers or not. But I think we're going to go with a guaranteed here unless this scandal gets in the way, and that is Jose Altuve. Jose Altuve is a guaranteed Hall of Famer if they put him in. I think that this Carlos Beltran era of if we're going to put him in the Hall of Fame or not is going to kind of set a precedent similar to what we saw in the steroid era when guys like Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire first started hitting those ballots. Sammy Sosa as well. I think that this sets the precedent for if they're going to let people involved with the Astros cheating scandal in, and there are plenty more that I didn't mention. But with that being said, that's the Hall of Fame discussion. We got a lot more to cover in the show, ladies and gentlemen. Quick piece of news. Jose Siri was traded to the Mets for Eric Orze, I believe is how you pronounce that. Siri had his best career year this year with the Rays, posting a 1.9 WAR and 18 home runs. Orze had a solid year in AAA, Syracuse, with the Mets AAA, posting a 2.92 ERA. And overall, I think it's kind of what both teams needed. The Rays are still always going to try and get young talent that they can go develop down in AAA Durham, down there at that beautiful ballpark at the DPAC. And the Mets are trying to win now. They had a fantastic run into the NLCS, and they lost to the Dodgers. And who knows? Maybe Siri is the guy that pushes him over. I think it was a good deal. He's had 2 good years in a row. I think he hit 23 home runs last year. So the bat's there. Speaking of the Rays, it was announced formally that the Rays would play at Steinbrenner Field, which is the spring training facility of the New York Mets. It has a capacity of 11,000 people. And the repairs to Tropicana Field's roof were just way too much. It was estimated at $55.7 million because the insurance claim, the Rays lowered their insurance premium from, I think, 100 and some million down to 55 million, literally the year before this happened. And I'm not an insurance expert. That's not my career field. So if you guys are experts on insurance, please explain in the comments. I just know that they wanted to pay less money on insurance. So the insurance company's like, you know what, we're going to cover a little bit less of that. And then a disaster happened that affected everybody. And again, we're sending the best wishes out to people affected by all the hurricanes, natural disasters that we saw in Florida and in Western North Carolina and Appalachian Mountains, etc. So, there's a lot of interesting things with this because following this news, which came out not too long after Dugout Debrief last week dropped, is that the Rays or the city of St. Petersburg announced that they might not have the finances and there might be too many political issues, licensing and zoning rules to get that stadium downtown St. Petersburg that they wanted by 2028. And they're citing the aforementioned damage to the state, to Tropicana Field, and political issues within Pinellas County, Florida. I mean, this is a government thing. This is a thing we have to remember. But the big thing that we have to think about here, guys, is we have 2 teams playing in a spring training / AAA facility. The Oakland A's are now just the A's, apparently, as Fisher wants them to be referred to as, are playing in their AAA Sacramento stadium for the time being, as there's no real solid plan for the stadium in Las Vegas as of now. The Rays are stuck, at least for 1 year, paying a lot of money to the New York Yankees, more than their payroll, to play at Steinbrenner Field. That's not good. That's not good. That's a horrible look. Rob Manfred, do better. I understand that the stadium with the Tropicana Field situation was totally unprecedented and it was a disaster. And 1 year should suffice to figure out what's going on. Where are they going to go? Where are the Rays going to go? Are they going to go to Montreal? If they go to Montreal, they're going to have to change their name to the Expos. The city of Montreal has been very, very open that they will not take any team that is not called the Expos. Will they go to Nashville? Who knows? Where will they go? The MLB does not really need expansions. Obviously, they have two teams that need to find a home. And for the A's side, I'm still skeptical if the A's are ever going to play in a major league ballpark again. I think with shared revenue, John Fisher is probably just going to be satisfied with playing in a AAA ballpark that has a small capacity and maybe 1,000 people come. What does he care? He's got billions of dollars. He's like the 8th richest owner. Why should he care? As it comes to the Rays, I do think that the Rays legitimately want to win. I think it's more of an Arizona Coyotes situation where they can't physically draw the attendance, even though they're making an active effort to be better in a sense. I mean, the Coyotes, not so much, but the Rays, I mean, they made a World Series in 2020. Again, this is a bad look for the game. And all I can say about this situation is thanks, Manfred. You've made some good moves. You made some bad moves, but you have botched these two situations completely. So with that being said, we had a couple awards announced here recently. Paul Skeens won the National League Rookie of the Year. That did not surprise me. He 100% deserved it. As I made the argument here, I think in a few episodes, maybe even Out of Pocket episode too, I think I made this argument. I can't remember. Remind me, guys. Jackson Merrill did more for his team individually, but that's mainly because Jackson Merrill was on a team that was in a position to compete. I mean, the Padres, in my opinion, were the best team in the National League. Talent-wise this year. Obviously, the Dodgers defeated them and then went on to win the World Series, but I'd still say that the Padres were the better team when it comes to what's on paper. The Pirates are not in a position to compete right now, and they won't be for a while, especially with their ownership not really wanting to spend money. That's been an issue, but that's another thing. We're going to talk about that when we get to the Pirates here on our breakdown, which is quite a long time away. But because we're starting with the AL East here this week. But yeah, there was a variety of awards announced. Yeah, Paul Skeens won. Luis Heel won the Rookie of the Year on the American League side. That one was kind of weird to me. I think Colton Cowser did a little bit better or a little bit more for his team to win, especially in the position, but I get it because the Yankees did make the World Series. He did start World Series games, so that's kind of where they're getting that from. And while I just pull this up, if you hold with me, while I just pull this up, so I'm going to go list off some winner. There we go. My apologies about that delay, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, just some notable Gold Glove award. Jeez, my apologies. There we go. Okay, yeah. So Chris Sale, who just won the Cy Young in the National League, also got a Gold Glove. Patrick Bailey, Christian Walker, Bryce Terang, Matt Chapman, who's got a lot, Ezekiel Tovar, Sal Frelick, Ian Happ, who's had a good year, underrated year, Brenton Doyle, and then utility guy was Jared Trulio. Geez, excuse me. I cannot speak today, ladies and gentlemen. I'm having an issue. And as a team, it was the Milwaukee Brewers. And I just kind of want to go over these. That's the reason why I'm just reading them off. And I didn't have that in front of me, so I appreciate you guys working with me. For the American League, it was Seth Lugo bringing in for the pitching position. Cal Raleigh, Carlos Santana, Minnesota Twins. I feel like he's an ageless wonder. Andres Jimenez, who's won it 3 times in a row now. Alex Bregman, another piece of hardware to boost his credits for his free agency. Bobby Witt Jr. did not surprise me. Dalton Varsho had a fantastic year. We'll get to him later. Stephen Kwan, Bobby Abreu, excuse me, and Dylan Moore. And they did not give one out team-wise. And yeah, I mean, like we're saying, Alex Bregman, this really helps out his case. Another piece of hardware to bring home because these infielders are hard to get. I mean, and there's a little market for them. These power hitting corner infielders, especially, you get once every so often. And I think Bregman's worth the money. But that's just me. So with that being said, we're going to go move on to the breakdown. So I am first going to explain something that is complicated, but not so at the same time. It's MLB free agency for you guys who don't know. So if you guys have not played, if you guys have not played Road to the Show, and the MLB video game. So your first 3 years, you're under club control. They determine your contract. There's very little room for maneuverability unless you have a more lucrative contract. You're a guy like Paul Skeens that was drafted really high, someone like that. After those 3 years, you have arbitration. So you send in what you think you're worth. Your agent sends that in. The team sends in what they think you're worth. And then an arbitrator looks at it, and then they come up with a number based on those two. After that, after those 6 years have passed, you're unrestricted. That you can go wherever you want or nowhere if nobody wants you. So with that being said, we have the Orioles. That's why you'll see this will make sense when I start this. Orioles, what they have. I mean, by the way, guess the highest paid player in the Baltimore Orioles this past year. Just take a guess. There's a lot of talent on that team. There's a lot of talent on that team. It's James McCann. James McCann is the highest paid player on the Baltimore Orioles. That is crazy. And he's a free agent this year, too. Who they got? Yeah, Adley Rutschman through 2026. Gunnar Henderson, who's still on renewable until 2025. So he's just on his second year, by the way. And he's on essentially the minimum, I think, for his like draft caliber. I think he's at like, 800,000. That's like nothing. Yeah, I mean, for baseball players. Grayson Rodriguez, who's underperformed, is under club control and pre-arbitration. Felix Bautista, who I think was a big reason why the Orioles did not win a playoff game this year and did not fight the Yankees more for that division under club control through 2020 or until 2028. And then the very, very overpaid Zach Eflin as well. Zach Eflin, who signed a three-year $40 million contract with a 10-9 record, posting a 3.59 ERA in 2024. That was atrocious. There's nothing else to be said. Not worth the money. The Orioles are weird. Where do they go from here? I mean, pitching, like everybody. I mean, everybody needs pitching. They need to try and retain Corbin Burns or go big. If Corbin Burns does not want to come back to Baltimore, then they got to go after a Max Fried kind of guy or a Blake Snell. There's nothing else really to be said. Burns wants a lot of money. His estimate right now, last time I read, is 6 years, $175 million, and that's for a 30-year-old, by the way. So he wants to be doing this until he's well past his prime. So I'd say his prime probably is going to go to 35. So I think a team will bite on it, but I don't know if Baltimore is willing to do that. We will see in the future. I've heard New York and LA is trying to go for him. I don't personally want the Dodgers to go for him, but this isn't the Dodgers breakdown. They usually don't spend much. Again, as aforementioned, Blake Snell, again, he's going to be expensive. Snell actually had back-to-back good seasons, which is the first time in his career he's done that because he's done Cy Young, bad year, essentially, I feel like forever. Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of time. I think these guys are going to wait. And also they have a lot of time until they got to pay Adley and Gunnar. They have a long time. I mean, they have a window, but when that window closes, that is it. That is it. Oh, and Chris Sale and Tarek School, which won the Cy Young, by the way, because I'm recording this the night before. So that just came to my phone. Breaking news. Sorry, I'm not fancy like Michael and don't have the banner coming up, but maybe go a more risky guy like an injury-prone Max Fried. I mean, he might take a lower amount of money compared to a guy like Blake Snell, who's established at a Cy Young Award year and then a fantastic year to follow it up this year, a no-hitter this year. So it depends. Are they willing to spend money? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe lastly, a guy like Max Scherzer, who's getting on the older side, but still is maintaining relative consistency, just injury prone. He's estimated at 12.5 million, or he only got 12.5 million this last year, which I think he's going to go for less. And I think Baltimore would be willing to pay that. Nathan Eovaldi, maybe. Eovaldi's been injured, and I think Texas is wanting to move on from Eovaldi because that contract just didn't work out for Michael Davis is the president's Texas Rangers, so I'm sure he is very happy to hear me mention the man Nathan Eovaldi, who I do love, by the way. I do love Nathan Eovaldi. What's in the future? My apologies. So yeah, what's in the future for Baltimore Orioles? They'll continue to dominate in their low market. Nothing like the Rays in a sense of saving money, but they will soon have a crossroads where they're going to have to pay this talent. This window is going to close at some point. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but all windows close. And you don't want to be a team like Washington that looks at it and they had 6 years to do this, 4 to 6 years to do this. And they're sitting here in 2019 being like, this is, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Everybody's going to be gone. What are we going to do? This is scary. Like, don't put yourself in this situation, Baltimore. Pay someone, put up a fight. Put up a fight. You don't win the division. You don't win the division. It's fine. New York's going to probably win the division anyway. I'm not giving my official prediction. Mr. Jason will be on for that, by the way. But you need to make a splash. 2 straight disappointing early playoff bowouts. Didn't even win a game this year. It was embarrassing this year. You need an ALCS run, minimally ALCS run to start impressing people. And we get it. You're ahead of expectations. That's fine. My prediction, 91 wins, second place in the AL behind New York Yankees. That's my prediction. I think Baltimore wins 91, and I think they're going to finish behind New York. How many New York's going to have, we'll figure it out when Jason's on the show. Next, the Rays, the aforementioned Rays, who are kind of going through it right now, to say the least. Who they have, Shane Baz, who's on this last year pre-arbitration, by the way. Jeez, he was part of that Pirates deal. He was part of that Chris Archer deal, so he's been around for a lot longer than you'd think. The former Dodger, Ryan Pepio, who I actually got to see pitch his MLB debut, fun fact, in Pittsburgh, last year of arbitration as well. Shane McClanahan is under club control through 2027, who was fantastic, but he's injury-prone to all heck. And Pete Fairbanks, who had a great 2024 club option through 2027 as well. Trade piece? Everybody needs bullpen arms. Dodgers, Orioles, Yankees, Padres. I think you trade him. I would. If I was you, I'd wait to the deadline, Tampa. I'd trade him. I'm not opposed to that at all. Brandon Lau, 2026 club option, had a pretty darn good year. And their best pitcher this year is Zach Little, who is under control through next year, who's a Burlington, North Carolina native, fun fact. Burlington, North Carolina. What they need, honestly, either everything or nothing. Elaborate. This team that has consistently had the lowest payroll in the MLB since 2020, in the COVID-shortened year, record 40-20. 2021, 100 wins, 100 wins, 62 losses. 86-76 in 2022, 76. 99-63 in 2023, and then 80-82, 2 games under 500. This is the worst year that they've had, and it wasn't even that bad. And they traded away their cornerstone, their brick and mortar guy. They traded away Randy Arozarena to Seattle. They either need everything or they need nothing. And there's no, we're going to get to that in my prediction because they're a very boom or bust team. With that being said, there's a lot that they need, to say the least, or nothing. Maybe go for a cheaper option. We're going to mention these guys again, who I think are good. Frankie Montas, Anthony DeSclafani, someone like that, someone who's not going to want a lot of money. McClanahan has had a fantastic year, but he has had health issues, and it wouldn't surprise me, since he has a little more club control, to try and trade him and Fairbanks while they still have value, or they'll hang on to them. I think they're going to kind of read that. They're a smart organization. They're a well-run organization. Maybe it's not sustainable, but who am I to judge? I'm not an expert. Final team we're going to talk about today, ladies and gentlemen. I forgot the record. Jeez, I'm an airhead today, aren't I? 74 wins. 74 wins, and where they are in the standings, last or second to last. I think they take a step back, but again, a respectable 74 wins. I say 74-80. We'll put them there. Or they'll win 90 and go to the World Series. Who knows? It's Tampa. We never know. Now, for real, moving on. Toronto, the last team we're going to be talking about today, ladies and gentlemen. What they have, a lot. The Vlad Jr., who had a fantastic bounce back here, 6.2 WAR. George Springer, Bo Bichette, both through 2026. The long-term Jose Barrios on a long-term deal. Kevin Gausman through 2026. Chris Bassett through this year. And Dalton Varsho, who is arguably their second best year, is only on renewal. That was a steal, by the way. Dalton Varsho was a steal from Arizona. That was one of the bigger steals, I think, of the recent era. And disappointment, again, for Toronto. And it's seeming like it's kind of consistent, either playoff bowouts or second to last place in that incredibly tough division. They can't beat these guys. They can't beat the elite teams. They've struggled. They couldn't beat teams like New York, Baltimore, Cleveland. Houston, they couldn't beat these elite teams, and that's what they lacked on because their bullpen was not fantastic. I mean, like everyone, they need bullpen. Maybe end of career Alex Cobb, maybe Daniel Bard, someone like them. Make a trade. Go for a Tanner Scott. Try and get him from San Diego. Do something. Go get a bullpen arm to go add in there. Pitching has been the strength and weakness. They have amazing pitchers such as Kevin Gausman and Chris Bassett and Jose Barrios, but they also have guys who are incredibly disappointing, like Alek Manoah and then the recently traded Yoshi Kikuchi. Like just not great consistency with the Blue Jays, ladies and gentlemen. They need a lot. And Alek Manoah is an argument for his own. How much of that is injury, how much of that is personality is up for debate. They also need more reliable hitters, maybe a veteran guy who's had a solid career, a guy like Josh Bell who could be a cornerstone, lock down that locker room, which has had some issues with a lot of young guys. There's a lot to be said with Toronto. That would honestly, I could go on and on for hours. What's their future? Hard to tell. Boom or bust. Complete boom or bust team. This team could either come in second place behind New York, or they could be in last place like they were recently. What's my prediction? I think they're the bounce back. I'm going to say the Rays drop. I'm going to say the Blue Jays go up because I think they're going to spend this year. I think that they're going to make a splash. I think they're going to go throw a bone at Blake Snell or Max Fried or maybe even Alex Bregman. They're going to go throw a bone and they're going to hit the jackpot. I think they're going to get 92 wins this year, and I think that they will be that AL team to bounce back. They are my third place AL team, by the way. My third place AL team, by the way. I almost got ahead of myself. That's for next episode when we have Jason. So with that being said, I don't like wasting y'all's time. That was my part one of the American League breakdown. It is now time for our trivia question. We're going to get out of here. So last week's trivia question was a fun one. What MLB team shared a city and had the same name as an NFL team from 1960 to 1987? So you need to name both teams, and they're not located in the same city anymore, but they have the same name. So I'm going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was the St. Louis Cardinals. There were two of them at once at the same time from 1960 to 1987 for quite a while. There were two teams called the Cardinals. That was before the Rams were in St. Louis. The Cardinals moved to Arizona. They're the Phoenix Cardinals and became the Arizona Cardinals. They've been there for a while. And the Cardinals, I believe, are the oldest active NFL team, I believe, but quote me on that if I'm wrong. So yeah, the Cardinals, and obviously the baseball Cardinals are the most classic but boring teams in all of the land. And this week's trivia question is, what were the Miami Marlins formerly known as? That's it. What were they known as previously? Pretty cut and dry. No Googling. Don't look it up because that's no fun. Who wants to do that? It's the whole point of trivia. No phones, no computers. We don't need that. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you have been watching Dugout Debrief on the best up-and-coming sports YouTube channel, social media, everything. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to like this video. Make sure to give my buddies videos a watch. We got everything here, ladies and gentlemen. We got pro wrestling, MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL. We got quick hits. We got out of pocket, which covers everything. I'm a recurring character on there. We got sideline savants, which I desperately need because I am having an atrocious fantasy year. Wayne and Jason just dropped an episode on Wednesday. Make sure to watch that so you don't end up coming in second to last like I am right now. So that being said, Lombardi Party, we got a Packers podcast with Carson. And yeah, Gridiron Address. I'm on there basically every week. Aaron's my buddy. He's my boy. We're going to talk some Steelers more than likely this Sunday. We talked them last Sunday. Steelers got a big game at First Energy on the lake. We just won in Baltimore. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy I got to talk to you about the American League East Part 1. Stay tuned for next week and have a fantastic Thursday. Thank you for watching.